Miranda, you are the regional editor for OCCRP, Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project, and you are dealing with Azerbaijan and Central Asia, which are really there is no secret, this is authoritarian regimes. In general, we know that there is corruption there. There is no really democratic process that the corruption would influence the society. But really, what are the stories we're working now? What a development? What is the recent development? We follow, the really very tragic cases of the persecution of the Azerbaijan reporters. We hear less about the Central Asia, though we know that people are pushed away from the region, those who are investigating.
Well, in terms of Central Asia, any journalists that really did any stories that authorities didn't agree with are already, they have already left the country. And this is something that's been going on for, 5-10 years. So it's not new. I think what's happening in Azerbaijan now is a real crackdown that took place many years ago in Central Asia. These countries are operating in complete impunity. What you know here is, judiciary, police, independence doesn't exist there. You will be framed with, illegal drugs, or you will be just accused as a journalist for attacking a policeman, and that will take you for a month in jail. So, and then, you can be charged with corruption or with illegal work, and that could be, years-long sentences. I think what's also going on is that authorities are cracking down on access to information. So even where you had the ability to report and obtain documents, it's now becoming increasingly difficult. The media are being closed down in Azerbaijan. The most recent thing is that, for example, RFERL Azeri service is not allowed. Basically, their website is blocked. So they can't even, reach the audience inside the country. So the authorities are really working very hard to shut down any kind of independent voice or any kind of criticism of their actions.
So, for instance, in particular with Azerbaijan, in case of Aliyev, there was so much evidence, international evidence, and we're speaking about a really, really big money because this is an oil-rich country. So really, what are the things we can, tell? Because it's kind of, he's corrupt. It's there. But what are the ways really to do something with that? Maybe there are sometimes the involvement of the Western companies, which are more transparent, and sometimes you can, find something. And how do you see the reaction of the let's say, international law enforcement, which might somehow find something that there would be at least any, I wouldn't say punishment, but at least any, result, any procedure, any investigation?
Well, Azerbaijan is very good into bribing their own way into US and EU. I mean, when the President Trump was inaugurated, one of the first clients in his hotel was actually Azerbaijan embassy, who paid for a lavish party on the day of inauguration. They have been bribing, EU officials. It's a well-known case of MP Volante from Italy who has received money to basically support Azerbaijan. For a long time, Azerbaijan was putting a fake face with the European Union, saying, "Oh, we want to be close to you. We want to cherish European values." And then on the other side, they have been slowly cracking down on journalists and activists and so on. Other problem is that, yes, it is a very oil-rich country. European and US companies have massive interests in Azerbaijan. There is a lot of money to go around. And I think part of the problem is that from the European perspective, what you see is a very rich family, buying properties in London, opening exhibitions. They ran a massive foundation which has been building statues all over Europe, paying a lot of money. So what they see is, richness and influence, and they don't really care about, and they don't know about corruption and how regular people live.
And is there any movement of the Western governments? Because, we are speaking about, we at Hromadske, we as a Ukrainian investigative journalists, who had to be interested in the corruption in the region because it's so connected. started to raise the issue. We are following to the commands of the foreign governments, the bank officials who say that, there should be more transparency in money laundering. But do you feel there is any kind of movement, and among some of the politicians there would be some who are really eager to fight those on the European and international level?
I think all the reporting about, especially the case of Khadija Ismailova, who was jailed for 7 years and released after huge international pressure, basically is opening eyes in Europe, and people are more skeptical, at least, about Azerbaijan and the first family of Azerbaijan. I think what we need to do very often in countries like Azerbaijan, Central Asia, average people in our countries don't know how bad these countries are. What they see is a postcard perfect images of, huge glass buildings, the richness, the wealth, but they don't see the real life of Azeri people. And I think we as a journalist, we need to speak about it and show the true picture. I think there are also consequences. I mean, we did one of the stories about the gold mine that was owned by the first family. It turned out the family couldn't sell their gold because it became publicly known that they were behind the gold mines. So they were forced to, pass on that business. And I think that showed that there are consequences. And I think more reporting we do, the more effect it will have.
If we speak about Central Asia, there are, because they are not so trying to reach the West, they are not so, probably well known, so there is not that much international interest. But we speak about Turkmenistan, which is one of the closest countries globally, Tajikistan, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and Uzbekistan. Yeah, there are really different things in there. But what are really the stories to follow? Kyrgyzstan is semi-democracy. Tajikistan, I think things are getting worse there. What we know with the family and his, son, who might become the president in a couple of years, and currently the mayor of the capital. We had a story of the Uzbekistan, where we have Karimov as probably the dictator of the region, who passed away last year. But still, so that's maybe confusing for a lot of people, but I think it's very important that these stories are becoming prominent. So would you, let us know a bit in some of the stories to follow in this region?
Well, I think, Central Asia is actually where we can have an effect. We've done a lot of stories in the past couple of years, basically proving Western companies paying massive bribes in order to enter the markets in, Uzbekistan, enter the markets in Tajikistan, because this is a big market with a lot of money to be made, and every Western company basically have their fingers on it and they want to make money. And I think the good thing about our part of the world is there is a rule of law. And if our company goes and bribes some official in Tajikistan, in Uzbekistan, the authorities here will react and will either fine the company or there might be even a prosecution. I think in case of Gulnara Karimova, which I worked on together with SVT, she's the former, she's now in the house arrest. People who worked with her, who were laundering money for her, are all jailed in Uzbekistan. The U.S. authorities are looking to recover more than $1 billion. Tilia Sonera will be fined probably about $800 million or over $1 billion for bribing the regime. Wimpelcom has already been fined hundreds of millions of dollars. So I think there are consequences. And I think, the way what we can do is, somebody in Uzbekistan doesn't care about keeping money in Uzbekistan. They're not stealing in order to own a massive palaces there. What they're stealing for is in order to, have palace in France, in UK, in Hong Kong, and these are also places where they'll keep their money. So as long as we watch out for this, report about corruption, report about the bribe, there is a chance that that money will be recovered for the people.
Can you give more details on the development in Tajikistan? Because this is probably the least covered country. It's the poorest. There is some speculation, Kyrgyzstan, the journalists still can travel there. Uzbekistan is also very, rich in terms of resources. Kazakhstan is trying to get foreign investment with their gas companies. But this country were really for a lot of time had been ignored because it's poor, it doesn't have that much oil reserve, but that's what we know, that it's really now when there are more and more journalists kicked out and there is some kind of even the worst situation.
Well, Tajikistan, president has many daughters, and those daughters
9,
are
I think.
husband, yes.
And not the
And-
9, and anytime you do the investigation about one daughter,
Yes, and the president is very sensitive about his daughters, but even more about the son-in-laws who are basically running the business. And what we have done, these people, one son-in-law will own literally his own empire. And this empire would control, a huge percentage of the economy. It's going to range from the mines till, even, issuing car license plates in the country. So basically, you have one family which is trying to control the whole country.
okay, so keep up the good work. I think it's really, I mean, being a Ukrainian, we know how difficult it is sometimes to raise an international attention when it's needed, because, it's not just about them, but about the fact that, I mean, the money are laundered elsewhere, and you still expect from the West some standard if you speak about the values and the rule of law. And really, then you see the Central Asia, where, even we don't pay enough attention to explain what's happening.
Well, as a journalist, it's a fascinating region for me. In my part of the world, if somebody steals $1 million, you think it's a big deal. In that part of the world, people steal in billions. And and they do it so bluntly and without even trying to hide. They act as there's nobody who will ever do anything to them.
I do think it's also the interesting thing because, the region is still a sphere of influence of Russia. So there is the Western companies trying to come, but therefore it's not so under the scrutiny of the foreign reporters as some others region where there is a long history of the Western companies working.
That is true. I mean, foreign reporters are normally not allowed in, and then if you are allowed in the country, you will be followed. And I think we do more damage than good by basically, for example, working with the local reporters who then get harassed and lose job or are suffering in other ways. I think those are the countries where secret services conducting massive surveillance. They're monitoring all the communications. Your hotel might be bagged. You might have a camera in your hotel. So as a Western reporter, you need to be extremely careful what you do and how you act.